I'm Caitlin Martinez, 26 years old, and my entire world flipped upside down in less than 24 hours. Life has the strangest way of teaching lessons. The exact same day my parents decided I was a complete disappointment and threw me out with just the clothes on my back was the precise moment the universe handed me an $89 million lottery jackpot. They thought they were giving me a reality check about responsibility. Instead, they taught me that sometimes you have to lose your family to find your true self. Before I tell you how I went from sleeping on park benches to becoming a multi-millionaire overnight, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt like the black sheep in your own family. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this story unfolds. Growing up in Cedar Falls, I always felt like an alien in my own home. My father, Roberto Martinez, was a successful contractor who built his empire from nothing. He believed success came through hard work, practical skills, and building something tangible with your hands. My mother, Carmen, shared his pragmatic worldview as a nurse practitioner who valued stability, steady paychecks, and sensible life choices above all else. Then there was me, dreaming of capturing the world through a camera lens. From age 13, I carried my grandmother's old film camera everywhere, shooting everything from dewdrops on spider webs to the weathered faces of elderly people at the farmer's market. My parents tolerated what they called my photography phase, but made it crystal clear they expected me to outgrow it and pursue something with real earning potential. The only person who truly understood my passion was my grandmother, Esperanza. While my parents pushed me toward nursing school or business administration, Abuela would slip me rolls of film and whisper, "Mija, the world needs artists to show its beauty. Never stop seeing what others cannot." She'd frame my amateur photographs and hang them proudly in her living room, telling visitors, "My granddaughter took these. She has magic in her eyes." When I turned 22, Abuela gave me her most precious possession, a vintage Leica camera that had belonged to her late husband, my grandfather. "Your abuelo bought this for me when we were young and poor," she explained, tears glistening in her eyes. "He said every moment of beauty deserves to be remembered. Now it's your turn to remember the world." That gift meant more to me than my college diploma ever would. After graduation, I took a job at a marketing firm to appease my parents. For 4 years, I withered behind that desk, editing corporate brochures and social media posts while dreaming of real photojournalism. My evenings and weekends were spent building my portfolio, shooting local events and portraits, slowly building a client base through word of mouth and social media. Every Sunday, Abuela and I had a sacred ritual. We'd meet for lunch at Rosita's Cafe, and she'd insist on buying lottery tickets afterward. "One for me, one for you," she'd say with a mischievous grin. "Dreams need a little magic sometimes, Mija." I'd roll my eyes playfully, but it was our tradition. When she passed away 2 years ago, I was devastated. At the reading of her will, I inherited her lottery number combinations written in a small leather notebook. Inside the cover, she'd written in her careful script, "Keep playing these numbers, mi amor. They carry our family's hopes, and remember, the biggest lottery in life is having the courage to follow your heart no matter what others say." I continued our Sunday ritual alone, using her special numbers each week. It felt like keeping her spirit alive, maintaining our connection across the veil between life and death. Meanwhile, the tension at home reached a breaking point. Despite having moved back in with my parents after college to save money for camera equipment, I was now 26 and their patience with my artistic pursuits had completely evaporated. Every dinner became a battlefield of expectations versus dreams. "When are you going to apply for that supervisor position at the hospital?" Mom would demand, referring to an opening in the radiology department. "The benefits alone would set you up for life." "You're wasting your degree, Caitlin," Dad would add, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Photography isn't a career, it's a hobby. You need to think about your future, about retirement, about security." I tried explaining how my freelance work was growing, how I'd recently shot a wedding that paid me $2,000, how a local magazine had started using my event photography regularly. But their eyes would glaze over whenever I mentioned Instagram followers or client testimonials. To them, success couldn't be measured in artistic fulfillment or creative expression. 3 weeks before everything exploded, I found a small studio apartment listed online. Nothing fancy, just a converted loft above a coffee shop downtown, but it had north-facing windows perfect for natural light photography. The rent was steep, but if I could book just 2 more weddings per month while keeping my day job, I could swing it. I scheduled a viewing, my heart racing with possibility. This could be my space, my sanctuary where I could edit photos without judgment, store equipment without criticism, create without walking on eggshells. Abuela's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, "Fly, Mija. It's time to spread your wings." I naively believed my parents would eventually understand once they saw me succeeding independently. I imagined inviting them to my first gallery showing, watching pride replace disappointment in their eyes as they finally grasped what I was building. The universe had different plans entirely. The argument that shattered everything erupted on a Wednesday evening in March. I'd finally mustered the courage to announce my decision to leave the marketing firm and pursue photography full-time. I'd rehearsed my speech for days, preparing responses to every objection I could anticipate. What I hadn't prepared for was the volcanic eruption of their reaction. "You're throwing away a perfectly stable career for what? Taking pictures at parties?" Dad's face turned crimson as he slammed his coffee mug down so hard I thought it might shatter. "This isn't just disappointing, Caitlin. It's completely irresponsible." Mom's approach was more surgical but equally devastating. "Sweetheart, I understand wanting to follow your passion, but people with real talent get discovered early. They don't need to quit their jobs and become financial burdens on their families." Her words cut deep, precise as a scalpel. I tried presenting my business plan, showing them my growing client list, the positive reviews, the steady increase in bookings. But every point I made was dismissed like smoke in the wind. "You made $1,200 last month," Dad scoffed, waving a piece of paper I recognized as my bank statement. "That's not a business, that's a garage sale." My heart sank as I realized what he was holding. "You went through my private financial records? When you live under our roof, your finances are our business," Mom said defensively. We needed to see what this photography nonsense was actually earning. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. They'd invaded my privacy, rifled through my personal documents, and used that information as ammunition against my dreams. "And what about this?" Dad continued, pulling out another familiar item, my journal, the one where I poured out my hopes, fears, and most private thoughts about my artistic vision. "You read my journal?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the pounding of my heart. "We needed to understand what was going on in your head," Mom justified. "You've been secretive, staying up all hours working on these projects instead of focusing on your real job." "Photography is my real work," I said, fighting back tears of anger and humiliation. "And I'm 26 years old. You have no right to invade my privacy like this." Dad's ultimatum came swift and brutal, delivered with the finality of a judge passing sentence. "Either you keep your job at the marketing firm and treat this camera hobby like what it is, a weekend distraction, or you need to find somewhere else to live. We won't enable this fantasy anymore." My younger brother Carlos, who'd been silently eating his dinner throughout this confrontation, finally spoke up. "Maybe Dad's right, Kate. You've always been the dreamer in the family, but sometimes dreams don't pay the bills." His words stung almost as much as my parents' betrayal. Growing up, he'd been my ally, my partner in creative games and imaginative adventures. Now, he was just another voice telling me to abandon who I truly was. I made one last desperate attempt to reach them. "You always taught me to work hard for what I want, to be independent and follow my convictions. That's exactly what I'm doing. Why can't you see that? Independence means paying your own rent, not living here while you play artist," Dad replied coldly. Mom's expression softened slightly. "We just want what's best for you, Caitlin." "No," I said quietly, my voice gaining strength. "You want what's easiest for you to understand. What fits into your narrow definition of success." That was apparently the final straw. Dad stood up, pointing toward the stairs. "Pack your things. I want you out by morning." I spent the next 5 hours in my childhood bedroom, tears streaming down my face as I tried to fit my entire life into 2 duffel bags. The irony wasn't lost on me that one of the bags was a gift from Abuela for my 23rd birthday. "For your adventures," she'd said with a knowing smile. Some adventure this was turning out to be. I had to make heartbreaking choices. Which camera's equipment was absolutely essential? Which photographs were too precious to leave behind? What clothes would I need most? Each item I packed felt like a small surrender, while everything I left behind felt like abandoning pieces of my soul. As midnight approached, I remembered it was Wednesday, lottery drawing night. Abuela and I had always checked our numbers together. Now I did it alone, a bittersweet ritual of connection to her memory. I pulled out my phone to check the lottery app, but was greeted by a system maintenance message. "Updates in progress. Please check back in 8 to 12 hours. Even this small comfort was denied to me tonight. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., planning to check the numbers before facing whatever came next. I cried myself to sleep next to my packed bags in the room that would no longer be mine come morning. The next morning brought a steady drizzle that matched my mood perfectly. Dad stood at the front door, arms crossed, watching as I struggled down the stairs with my overloaded duffel bags. Mom hovered in the kitchen doorway, her expression a complicated mixture of worry and stubborn resolve. Neither offered to help with my bags. The silence was deafening. "Your phone will stay on our family plan through the end of the month," Dad informed me, his tone purely businesslike. "After that, you're completely on your own. The supervisor position at the hospital is still available," Mom added, making one final attempt to pull me back into their vision of a sensible life. "It's not too late to reconsider." I said nothing, just nodded and headed toward the door. I had exactly $847 in my checking account, a credit card that was nearly maxed out from buying camera equipment, and no idea where I was going to sleep that night. "This is for your own good, Caitlin," Dad said as I stepped onto the porch. Sometimes people need a wake-up call to face reality. The door closed behind me with a definitive click. Just like that, I was homeless. The rain immediately began soaking through my jacket. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called my best friend since high school, Sarah. "Kate, what's wrong? You sound terrible." Her voice came through clearly, though I could hear traffic in the background. "My parents kicked me out," I managed, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I need somewhere to stay." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm actually driving to Denver right now for that conference, remember? I won't be back until Tuesday." The genuine distress in her voice made me feel even worse. "But use my spare key. It's still under the fake rock by the mailbox. Stay as long as you need." A wave of relief washed over me until I remembered. "Didn't your apartment flood last week? You're staying with your sister until the repairs are done, right?" "Shit, I completely forgot." "Kate, I'm so sorry. I feel terrible." I tried calling 3 more friends with similar results. One was out of state visiting family, another was between apartments and crashing on couches herself, and the third had relatives staying in her spare room. By my 5th call, the rejections started feeling personal, even though I knew logically they weren't. With nowhere else to turn, I began walking toward downtown, my duffel bags growing heavier with each step. The rain intensified, seeping through my shoes and chilling me to the bone. Cars passed by, splashing dirty puddle water onto my jeans. I must have looked pathetic, a 26-year-old woman dragging her life behind her through the rain, mascara running down her cheeks. After nearly an hour of walking, I reached the Sunrise Motel, a place I'd passed countless times, but never imagined needing. Its neon sign flickered erratically, but the word, vacancy, promised shelter. The lobby smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial air freshener. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her name tag read Linda. "Rough morning, honey?" she asked, taking in my soaked appearance and obvious distress. "You could say that," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "How much for a room?" $85 plus tax, she said gently. "Checkout's at 11 tomorrow." I counted out the money, mentally calculating how little that left me. Linda handed me a key attached to a plastic number 7. "Continental breakfast starts at 6, she added with a warm smile. Nothing fancy, but the coffee's strong and the pastries are fresh. The room was exactly what I expected from a budget motel: faded carpet, outdated furniture, a bathroom that had seen better decades. But it was clean and dry, and at that moment it looked like paradise. I peeled off my wet clothes and took the longest, hottest shower of my life, letting the water wash away my tears along with the rain. For the first time since the argument began, I allowed myself to completely break down, sliding down the shower wall to sit under the spray, sobbing until my chest ached. Through the thin walls, I could hear Linda talking to someone, presumably her husband. The electric company called again, Bob. We're 3 weeks behind. If we don't pay by Friday, they'll shut us off. I know, Linda. The credit card payment can wait another week. We need power more than we need good credit right now. Their financial struggles oddly comforted me. At least I wasn't the only one struggling to stay afloat. Later, wrapped in the motel's scratchy towel, I sat on the bed and took inventory of my situation. My savings account held exactly $3,247, the result of months of careful budgeting and freelance photography work. My camera equipment, at least what I'd been able to bring, was worth maybe $8,000 if I sold it all. But selling my equipment would mean abandoning photography entirely, which defeated the entire purpose of this nightmare. I opened my laptop and checked my email, hoping for a miracle. There was a message from the landlord of the studio apartment. Looking forward to showing you the space tomorrow at 2 p.m. The current tenant moves out this weekend, so you could move in as early as Monday if you're interested. A space I could no longer afford to rent. I opened a new document and created a survival plan. Find temporary housing I can actually afford. Get a job that pays cash immediately. Rebuild my savings while keeping my photography business alive. Eventually rent that studio when I'm financially stable. Each item felt like a compromise, a step backward from the dreams I'd been building. But survival had to come before ambition. Exhausted and emotionally drained, I crawled under the rough motel blankets. My last conscious thought was wondering if Abuela could see me now, and whether she'd be disappointed in how quickly I'd given up on following my heart. "I'm not giving up," I whispered to her memory. "I'm just regrouping." Outside, the rain continued its relentless drumming against the window, washing away the life I'd known and preparing the ground for whatever would grow in its place. The harsh buzz of my phone alarm jolted me awake at 7 a.m. For a confused moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling, the sound of highway traffic, the scratchy sheets, nothing felt right. Then reality crashed back over me like a cold wave. I was in a motel room because my parents had thrown me out. I reached for my phone to silence the alarm and noticed several notifications. Probably Sarah checking in, I thought, or maybe some freelance photography inquiries. A tiny part of me still hoped my parents had realized their mistake and wanted to reconcile. But the notification that caught my attention wasn't from any of them. It was from the lottery app I'd tried to check the night before. "Congratulations. You've won." My heart skipped as I read those words. "Yeah, right," I muttered, assuming it was one of those fake notifications designed to get you to open the app. Probably a free ticket or a $5 winner. But when I tapped on it, the screen that loaded made me sit bolt upright in bed. Winning numbers: 07-14-21-35-42-18. Those were Abuela's numbers. The exact combination from her leather notebook, the ones I'd been playing religiously every week since her death. My hands shook as I fumbled for my purse, pulling out the physical ticket to double-check. They matched. Every single number matched perfectly. My brain refused to process what my eyes were clearly seeing. This had to be some kind of mistake. Things like this didn't happen to people like me, especially not on the worst day of my life. I closed the app and reopened it. Same result. I Googled Powerball winning numbers and found the official lottery website. Same numbers. The jackpot amount made me gasp out loud: $89 million. The lump sum option after taxes would be approximately $43 million. "This can't be real," I whispered to the empty room, my voice echoing off the motel walls. "This stuff only happens in movies." With trembling fingers, I called the official lottery hotline. After what felt like an eternity on hold, a professional-sounding woman answered. State Lottery Commission, this is Jennifer. How can I help you? I think I won, I stammered. But I need to make sure it's not some kind of mistake or computer error. Jennifer asked for my ticket information and barcode number. There was a pause that stretched like eternity. Ms. Martinez, her voice took on a more formal tone. I can confirm that you are indeed holding the winning ticket for last night's Powerball drawing. Congratulations. I couldn't breathe. The room started spinning, and I had to put my head between my knees to keep from fainting.
Mom?
Are you okay? Yes, no. I don't know, I gasped. What do I do now? Jennifer walked me through the initial steps. Sign the back of the ticket immediately, keep it in a safe place, and contact a financial advisor and attorney before claiming the prize publicly. She recommended taking the anonymous route if possible in my state. I scribbled notes frantically, certain I'd forget everything the moment we hung up. When the call ended, I sat frozen on the edge of the scratchy motel bed. $43 million. 12 hours ago, I'd been agonizing over an $85 motel room. Now I could buy the entire motel chain and never think about money again. A hysterical laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest. Then another. Soon I was laughing so hard I couldn't catch my breath, tears streaming down my face. Whether from laughter or shock, I couldn't tell. There was a gentle knock at my door. Everything all right in there, honey? It was Linda's voice. I opened the door, still in yesterday's rumpled clothes, my hair a complete disaster, eyes wild with disbelief. I won, I whispered. Linda's brow furrowed with concern. Won what, dear? The lottery. I won the lottery last night. The big one. All of it. Her expression shifted from concern to bewilderment. The Powerball? That enormous jackpot. I nodded, then pulled her inside and closed the door. I can't tell anyone yet. I need to figure out what to do first. Linda guided me to sit on the bed like I was made of fragile glass. Take deep breaths, sweetheart. This is overwhelming. Yesterday I was homeless, I said, the full irony finally hitting me. My parents threw me out because they thought I was irresponsible and unrealistic. And now. I gestured helplessly at my phone, still displaying the winning numbers. Now you're a millionaire, Linda finished softly, her voice filled with wonder. I told her about Abuela's numbers, about our weekly ritual, about the notebook she'd left me. It's like she's still watching over me, I said through fresh tears. Linda squeezed my hand. Sounds like she knew you'd need a little magic when the time was right. That simple statement broke something loose inside me. I started crying again. But these weren't tears of despair anymore. They were tears of overwhelming gratitude, of disbelief, of grief for Abuela not being here to see this moment, and of pure, terrifying excitement about what came next. When I finally calmed down, a strange clarity settled over me. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I need a lawyer and a financial advisor, I said, wiping my eyes. And I need to stay quiet about this until everything's properly set up. Linda nodded approvingly. Smart girl. My brother Tom is a financial planner downtown. Very discreet, very trustworthy. I could call him if you'd like. Yes, please, I said gratefully. And can I extend my stay here for a few more days while I figure things out? Of course, honey. In fact, let me put you in our nicest room. On the house. I shook my head firmly.
No, I'll pay.
In fact, an idea formed, inspired by the conversation I'd overheard last night. Linda, how much would it cost to book every room in this motel for a week? Her eyes widened. All 12 rooms? That would be about $7,000, but why would you want to do that? Privacy insurance, I explained. Plus, it sounds like it might help with those bills I heard you discussing with Bob last night. Linda blushed. You heard that? I'm so sorry. Don't be. I understand financial stress better than most people think. I thought about my parents, who would soon learn about this incredible turn of events. A complex mix of emotions swirled in my chest: vindication, hurt, anger, and underneath it all, a tiny kernel of hope for eventual reconciliation. But first, I needed to secure my future and become the woman Abuela always believed I could be. One more thing, I said as Linda turned to leave. If anyone comes looking for me, especially a middle-aged Hispanic couple or a young man who looks like me, I'm not here. Understand? She nodded with a conspiratorial smile. Your secret's safe with me, honey. After she left, I sat back on the bed, staring at the lottery app still open on my phone. $43 million. Enough to never depend on anyone ever again. Enough to pursue my photography without compromise. Enough to help other young artists who might be facing their own family rejection. Abuela's voice seemed to whisper in my ear. See, Mija? Magic happens when you stay true to yourself. For the first time since walking out of my parents' house, I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes and warmed my heart. The universe had given me not just a second chance, but a complete do-over. By noon, I'd been disowned and homeless. By dawn, I was rich beyond imagination, and no one who had doubted me had any idea what had just happened. 2 days later, I sat in the polished downtown office of Tom Bradley, Linda's brother and a highly respected financial advisor. True to Linda's word, he was professional and discreet, not even blinking when I arrived wearing the same jeans I'd been wearing for 3 days straight. The first priority is protecting your winnings, Tom explained, sliding a thick folder across his mahogany desk. I've prepared paperwork for an anonymous trust. This allows you to claim the prize without your name becoming public record. Is that legal? I asked, scanning the complex documents. Absolutely. Several states allow lottery winners to remain anonymous through trust structures. It's the smartest move, especially given your unique circumstances. My unique circumstances. What a polite way of saying, overnight millionaire formerly homeless due to family drama. Together, we crafted a comprehensive financial plan. I would take the lump sum, invest 70% in a diversified portfolio, set aside a significant amount for taxes, and keep a reasonable sum liquid for immediate needs and opportunities. How reasonable are we talking? I asked. Tom smiled. For someone with $43 million, a few $100,000 in readily available funds is perfectly reasonable for getting established. The phrase "a few $100,000" made my head spin. 3 days ago, I'd been counting quarters for coffee. After signing what felt like dozens of documents, I made a special request. There's a motel, the Sunrise, where I've been staying. The owners, Linda and Bob, are struggling with their electric bills and other expenses. I'd like to anonymously pay off their mortgage and cover their outstanding debts. Tom didn't seem surprised. A generous first act. I'll arrange it through the trust, so it can't be traced back to you. That afternoon, with Tom's assistance, I found a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a secure building with excellent natural light for photography. The real estate agent's eyebrows shot up when I offered to pay the entire year's lease in advance, in cash. By evening, I had keys to my new home. My first purchases were practical: new clothes, toiletries, basic furniture, and a top-of-the-line laptop. I avoided anything too extravagant, still unable to fully grasp that I could afford literally anything I wanted. The one exception was photography equipment. I ordered a complete professional setup: cameras, lenses, lighting equipment, editing software, everything I dreamed of owning but could never afford. It would be delivered to my new apartment within 48 hours. A week after winning, I still hadn't told anyone about my windfall except Linda, Bob, and my financial team. I needed time to process everything, to decide how to handle my family situation, and to ensure my new wealth was properly secured. Then came the inevitable encounter I'd been both dreading and secretly anticipating. I was at Maya's coffee house, ordering my usual vanilla latte, when a familiar voice called my name. Caitlin? Is that really you? I turned to see my brother Carlos standing there, coffee cup in hand, looking shocked and uncomfortable. Carlos, I acknowledged coolly. I've been trying to reach you, he said, shifting awkwardly. You changed your number. I got a new phone plan, I replied, which was technically true. Look, can we talk? You seem different. His eyes took in my new designer blouse and the expensive watch on my wrist, small gifts I'd allowed myself as part of building a professional photography image. I am different, I said simply. We sat at a corner table, Carlos clearly burning with questions about my apparent prosperity. I offered no explanations, letting him marinate in his curiosity. So, where are you staying? He finally asked. I have a place, I said vaguely. And work? Did you get a new job or something?
I'm pursuing photography.
Full-time now. Carlos leaned forward. Kate, listen. Mom and Dad have been worried sick. They expected you to come back after a few days, maybe apologize for the way things got heated. They didn't think you'd actually stay away this long. I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. They threw me out in the rain with nothing but 2 duffel bags. What made them think I'd come crawling back? They were trying to teach you a lesson about practical choices, he said weakly. The only lesson they taught me is that their love comes with conditions I can't meet, I replied. I'm doing fine on my own. Better than fine, actually. Carlos gestured to my expensive clothes. I can see that. How is this possible? Last I heard, you were barely making enough from photography to cover gas money. Things change, I said with a mysterious smile. People adapt. Sometimes what looks like disaster is actually opportunity in disguise. Mom wants to talk to you, he said finally. They both do. Maybe if you called them, work things out. I'm not the one who needs to work things out, Carlos. I'm not the one who violated privacy, read personal diaries, and threw family members into the street. Carlos sighed. I know they went too far. But they love you, Kate. They just want you to be secure and stable. No, I said, standing up. They want me to be who they think I should be. There's a difference. As I walked away, I felt a familiar lightness in my chest. The power dynamic had shifted so dramatically it was almost surreal. I wondered how long it would take for word to spread through my family network. Not long, as it turned out. That evening, my new phone buzzed with texts from both parents. From Dad. Carlos says you're doing well. We should talk. From Mom. Please call us, Mija. We miss you terribly and want to work things out. I didn't respond to either message. Instead, I focused on setting up my new photography studio in the second bedroom of my apartment. With proper equipment and unlimited resources, I could finally create the artistic work I'd always envisioned. 3 weeks after winning, I officially launched my rebranded photography business, Esperanza Visual Stories, named after my grandmother. I hired a professional web designer and marketing consultant to create a stunning online presence. Within days, bookings started pouring in. My first major client was a tech startup that hired me to photograph their product launch event. The $5,000 fee was more than I used to make in 2 months. The same day that check cleared, I received a call from an unknown number. Caitlin, this is Dr. Patricia Reyes. Your mother gave me your number. Dr. Reyes had been my therapist briefly during college. I'd stopped seeing her when my parents, who were paying for the sessions, demanded to know what we discussed. How did my mother get this number? I asked, annoyed by the privacy invasion. She said Carlos had it. Listen, I'm not calling in any professional capacity. Your mother is genuinely concerned. There are rumors in the community that you've come into money somehow, and she's worried you might be involved in something dangerous. I almost choked on my coffee. She thinks I'm dealing drugs or something? She didn't say that exactly, but she's confused about your sudden change in circumstances. She's concerned about your safety and your choices. I considered my options. Dr. Reyes had always been respectful and professional, even when I'd stopped therapy over the confidentiality issues. I can assure you that my financial situation is completely legal and legitimate, I said carefully. But I appreciate the concern. Would you be open to a session? She asked. Just to talk through how you want to handle your family relationships going forward? My treat. The offer was tempting. I did need someone objective to help me navigate the complex emotions I was feeling about my parents. 1 session, I agreed. But I'll pay my own way. I can afford it now. Our meeting proved invaluable. Dr. Reyes helped me articulate what I wanted from my relationship with my parents moving forward, genuine respect for my choices, acknowledgement of how their actions had hurt me, and clear boundaries around my independence and privacy. You don't owe them an explanation about your money, Dr. Reyes advised. But if you want any kind of ongoing relationship, some version of the truth will eventually be necessary. She was right, of course. The question was whether I was ready to face them yet. The answer came sooner than expected. For weeks after being thrown out, I returned to my apartment building to find my parents waiting in the elegant lobby. My mother rushed forward when she saw me.
Caitlin, gracias a Dios.
We've been so worried about you. My father stood awkwardly behind her, taking in my appearance, the expensive building, the doorman who nodded respectfully as I entered. How did you find me? I asked calmly. Carlos followed you home yesterday, Mom admitted. We were desperate to make sure you were safe. As you can see, I'm fine, I said, gesturing to the marble lobby and crystal chandeliers. More than fine, actually. Dad finally spoke. Caitlin, what's going on? How can you afford to live here? This building, the rent must be astronomical. I looked at both of them, these people who had raised me, loved me in their way, and then discarded me when I didn't fit their mold. Part of me wanted to tell them everything, to watch their faces as they realized the magnitude of their mistake. Another part wanted to maintain my privacy and my power. Would you like to come up? I offered, making a decision. We have a lot to discuss. My parents stood speechless in the center of my new apartment, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city view, the expensive furniture I'd finally allowed myself to buy. This place must cost a fortune, Dad said, his contractor's eye clearly calculating square footage and rental rates. $4,000 a month, I confirmed. I paid the full year in advance. Mom touched the fabric of my silk blouse. And these clothes, Mija. Please tell us what's happening. Are you in some kind of trouble? I gestured for them to sit on the plush sofa, while I took the armchair opposite, a power position, just as Dr. Reyes and I had discussed. For weeks ago, you threw me out of your house because you decided my dreams were worthless. I began calmly. That same night, something else happened. I pulled out the lottery ticket, now professionally framed and hanging on my wall like a piece of art. I handed it to my father. What's this? He asked, squinting at the numbers. Abuela's special numbers, I said. The ones from... Abuela's special numbers, I said. The ones from her leather notebook. I won the Powerball jackpot that night. $89 million. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the city traffic 20 floors below. Dad's hands trembled as he held the framed ticket, his eyes moving from the numbers to my face and back again. This is real. Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. Completely real. After taxes, I received $43 million. The same night you decided I was a failure who needed to learn about responsibility. Dad's face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, then something that looked like grief. Caitlin, we had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. You were too busy reading my journal and going through my bank statements to notice that sometimes life has its own plans. Mom started crying. Not the delicate tears I'd seen her shed before, but deep, body-shaking sobs. We threw you out in the rain, she gasped between breaths. Our daughter, and we threw you out like garbage. Yes, you did. I agreed, not softening my words. You violated my privacy, dismissed my dreams, and gave me an ultimatum designed to break me. You succeeded, by the way. I was completely broken that night. Dad set the lottery ticket down carefully on my glass coffee table. What can we do? How can we possibly make this right? I prepared for this moment during countless conversations with Dr. Reyes. That depends entirely on what you're willing to acknowledge and change. Over the next 3 hours, we had the most honest conversation our family had ever shared. My parents apologized repeatedly, their shame and regret evident in every word. But I needed more than apologies. I need you to understand that this isn't about the money, I explained. The lottery win just proved that your version of practical and responsible isn't the only path to security. I need you to respect that I'm an adult capable of making my own choices, even if those choices look risky to you. We see that now, Dad said, his voice heavy with remorse. Your photography business, everything you've built since then, we were so wrong about your abilities. And the privacy violations can never happen again, I continued. My finances, my personal relationships, my living situation, those are my business unless I choose to share them. Mom nodded vigorously. Never again, Mija. We promise. There's something else, I said, reaching for a folder I'd prepared weeks earlier. I want to help, but on my terms. I handed them documents showing that I'd paid off their mortgage, eliminated Dad's business debts, and established college funds for Carlos's children. This isn't about flaunting my wealth or making you feel guilty. It's about family taking care of family when they're able to do so. Both parents stared at the papers in stunned silence. Why? Dad finally asked. After everything we did to you? Because Abuela taught me that love isn't conditional, even when it feels like it is. You hurt me deeply, but you're still my parents. I still love you, even when I don't like your choices. The reconciliation process wasn't immediate or perfect. It took months of family therapy sessions, careful boundary setting, and gradual trust building. But slowly, we found our way back to each other. 6 months after winning the lottery, I held my first official gallery exhibition. Esperanza, Seeing Beauty in Unexpected Places, featured photographs I'd taken during my homeless period and the early days of rebuilding my life. The centerpiece was a self-portrait taken in the Sunrise Motel mirror, a young woman with tear-stained cheeks but determined eyes, clutching a lottery ticket. My parents attended the opening, standing proudly beside enlarged photographs they finally understood represented not just my hobby, but my calling. Dad even bought 3 pieces for his office, telling everyone who visited about his daughter, the professional photographer. I'm sorry it took us so long to see your gift, Mom said as we stood together admiring my work. Abuela would be so proud. She's proud, I replied, touching the vintage Leica camera that now lived in a place of honor in my studio. I can feel it every time I pick up a camera. Carlos, who had initially been overwhelmed by my transformation, eventually became one of my biggest supporters. You showed us all what it means to stay true to yourself, even when everyone else thinks you're crazy, he told me at the gallery opening. The story of my lottery win eventually became public knowledge in our small community, but by then I was secure enough in my new life that the attention didn't bother me. I used the platform to advocate for young artists facing family pressure to pursue practical careers. I established the Esperanza Foundation, providing grants and mentorship to emerging photographers who needed equipment, education, or simply someone who believed in their vision. The first recipient was a teenager whose parents had forbidden her from taking art classes because they weren't serious subjects. Linda and Bob from the Sunrise Motel became like surrogate grandparents to me. When they eventually learned I was their anonymous benefactor, Linda hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. You gave us back our dignity, she whispered. We'll never forget that kindness. You gave me shelter when I had nowhere else to go, I replied. We took care of each other. 2 years after my lottery win, I was featured on the cover of American Photography magazine. The article, titled From Homeless to Millionaire, How One Artist's Faith in Her Vision Changed Everything, brought interview requests from around the world. But the moment that meant the most to me was much quieter. I was editing photos in my studio when my phone rang. It was Dad. Caitlin, I just got off the phone with Mrs. Patterson from church, he said, his voice filled with excitement. She wants to hire you to photograph her daughter's wedding. She said she's seen your work and you're exactly what they're looking for. In the old days, he would have suggested she hire a real photographer instead of indulging my hobby. Now he was actively promoting my business. Thanks, Dad, I said, smiling as I added another booking to my increasingly busy calendar. I'll give her a call. I'm proud of you, Mija, he said quietly. Not because of the money or the success, but because you never gave up on who you were meant to be. Those words meant more to me than $43 million ever could. As I write this, 5 years have passed since that terrible, wonderful night when I lost my family and found my fortune. My photography business thrives. The Esperanza Foundation has helped over 200 young artists, and my relationship with my parents, while different than it was before, is built on genuine respect and understanding. I keep Abuela's original lottery ticket framed in my studio, not as a reminder of my financial windfall, but as a symbol of the magic that happens when you refuse to abandon your dreams, even when everyone else thinks you should. Every Sunday, I still visit her grave and tell her about the latest artists I've helped, the photographs I've taken, the beauty I've captured through my lens. I leave fresh flowers and whisper the same words she used to say to me. The world needs artists to show its beauty. Never stop seeing what others cannot. The biggest lottery win in life, really, is having the courage to follow your heart, no matter what others say. Sometimes the universe just gives you $43 million to prove it. But the most important prize I won wasn't money. It was the unshakable knowledge of who I am and the absolute certainty that I'm exactly who I was meant to be. And that, more than any jackpot, is worth everything.